Hey.
Cheers.
It's
Not
perfect.
bad.
It's perfect.
This is
I
my
like
first
that.
time starting an episode with a cheers.
I'm honored then. That's lovely. I
You
love
brought
that.
the vibe.
Yeah, there we go. It's been my new thing anyway, so it works.
White wine?
Just wine in general.
Okay.
But yeah.
Oh yeah, because the wine bar.
Yeah, I've kind of started like a little collective. Me and one of my good friends, and we're trying to like open up a wine bar one day. So this has kind of been the vibe.
It's been the vibe.
100%.
I'm liking it. I feel like I need to integrate this more.
It fits. It's very fitting.
Yeah. So when I was preparing for this, everything was focused on bricks and wood.
Yep.
And then I was like, I double checked your profile. I'm like, wait, why is he doing like 4 other things I didn't know about? We'll go through everything today.
Yeah, let's do it.
I was gonna ask about bricks and wood, but I was curious how you describe what you do, because I feel like it goes beyond designer.
Yeah, it's funny because the designer, I try to dance around it because I have so much respect for people who like actually have the tangible craft of it.
Okay.
I definitely know that I have great, I'm confident in my ideas. When it comes to designer, I feel like there's more of a tangible physical skill that I don't necessarily have, or at least, this is why I stay away from it at least. I'm more of a creative, for sure, storyteller. I like that when people tell me that. I think that's the one I like resonate with the most. There's not really a job title for that. There's not like, oh, he's a storyteller, like, and he gets paid $100,000 a year. That doesn't really exist. But creative director is kind of like what falls under that same umbrella. But telling a story is the most important part over everything. I don't think I make or come up with anything overly innovative when it comes to actually designing apparel. I think it's more so how I'm able to tell my story that people who may not have experienced what I've experienced can like relate to across the the globe or my audience. So I think that's like where I try to lean into the storytelling conversation and like how do I put the pieces together and then kind of be a liaison for the magic rather than just like oh, I'm the designer. So like that's the easy thing to say, but am I
It's more than that. That's why I wanted to ask. I was like, I feel like it goes beyond fashion. I feel like what you embody and what you do could be applied to any other creative fields. You just chose fashion as like your current vehicle.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, with fashion, it was like, honestly, it was my plan B. Prior to all this, I was playing basketball, and like that was like my my dream to get to the NBA like any other kid growing up. And my dad naturally just kind of got me into clothes, just through his lens of what he was doing. Once the basketball thing started to kind of like fade, my next thing that I could find an interest in was just clothing, and trying to like walk in his footsteps in a way. So once I found that lane, I kind of just ended up with Bricks and Wood X amount of years later, and here we are. Now I'm doing a podcast with you.
Yeah. What do you think about the term visionary?
It's funny, that one doesn't get thrown around as much, but I think I can definitely find comfortability in that for sure. If that was labeled that, titled that, I could definitely I could settle in that for sure. Yeah.
So talking about bricks and wood.
Yep.
Okay. There's such a story behind it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, first of all, why you named it Bricks and Wood.
Yep.
And what the story and mission is behind it. Like we have to start there.
Yeah, you gotta get out the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bricks and Wood. It's funny because I had another brand before all this, and it was called Let Us Pray, and it was pretty much it was a very like monochromatic, spiritual, religious kind of based brand, similar to like a Fear of God, to be honest.
Okay.
This is before Fear of God was like an actual thing, so I wasn't copying anybody. But it was trendy, I would say. It was like a certain look that was happening around that time. And
the interruption
it's crazy.
is wild.
My story's that bad.
She just started crying. Okay, I think she's done.
The style of that was very like monochromatic. It was very trendy at the time. It was probably like 2000, like, I don't know, 14 maybe, 13, around that time. It was cool, and I think I had like a Tumblr and Instagram, that kind of thing for it, and I was like really working on it. And I made some samples. What I realized over time was it wasn't truly me coming up with my own ideas like from a very like genuine space. It was more so like taking references of other fashion and trying to like emulate those things.
There's no way this is.
I didn't know there's a dog in India.
But I thought. Okay. Where were we? She was really acting up though. That wasn't even like a regular bark. She was like demanding.
Were you like sleep? Had like a nightmare or something?
What were you saying?
I was talking about the brand name. Yeah, so no, we're Bricks and Wood. I came up with the name essentially I had another brand prior called Let Us Pray. The inspiration and the kind of style around it was very like monochromatic, and it was very trendy. It was around like 2000, like 13, 14. So it really fit like a look of what was happening at the time. The difference between then and now is like I really was pulling at that time from like other brands that I was inspired by and I liked at the time, rather than like pulling from like a genuine space of like, my experiences and my thoughts. So basically I kind of got out of that mode of realizing like, you know what, like, do I dress like this now? Yeah, but am I gonna look like this or have this same foundation if I'm just following trends or I'm following this zone that we're in? I'm like, maybe not, right? So I was like, you know what, I want to kind of like make sure I make something that's like true to me and has a foundation to who I am, like something that no one can take from me no matter what trend happens, no matter, how things change. Like, this is exactly like who I am and like where I want to be. I literally went in my notes one day in my phone and started typing in some names, and like Bricks and Wood was like one of the like maybe 5 that I wrote down. And at the time it had no definition. It just looked good, sounded good. I'm like, I'm gonna kind of sit on that. And then some time passed, maybe like a couple of weeks, maybe not even that long, maybe even a week. My dad was like, he literally one day was like, yo, like, a leaf fell on top of his car and he liked the textures of the leaf and he thought that the leaf textures could be implemented into a brand of some sort, like the textures, like the natural natures of like life and that kind of thing. I was like, yo, I never thought of nothing like, I didn't have anything specific to what you're saying, but I had a brand name I came up with the other day called Bricks and Wood. It's not the exact same, but those natural elements that you're talking about, and like how, that it works with the same concept. And he was just like, that's dope. And he was like, you should run with that. And I'll kid you not, that was in 2014. I literally ran home, changed everything. I changed my Tumblr, Instagram, whatever I had that was Let Us Pray at the time, switched it all over to Bricks and Wood, and the rest is history.
Yeah. I think it's cool that you tapped into just deciding you wanted something to be about you.
Yeah, I don't know what that was either.
Yeah, you think it was because like you were thinking longevity?
Yeah, I was definitely thinking long term for sure.
Yeah.
And even when I was doing the Let Us Pray brand, I wasn't thinking short term. I just recognized what other references were out there that was just another version of what I was doing. But like I said, I was pulling from something that's so trendy.
Yeah.
So if you start, by the time you get to something that's trendy, there's already a new trend forming, you know what I'm saying? So if I wasn't pulling from internally or like in my own mind and like trying to create something that felt very organic, I was going to always be chasing something. And I feel like once I realized I wasn't chasing it, I didn't want to chase that thrill or that concept of like what was cool. I was like, let me just take a step back and like tap in with myself. And then, like I said, I think once I realized that I saw longevity in that name and that type of like concept of what it meant, from there I was like, all right, cool. Now Bricks and Wood can live for as long as me and beyond, so yeah.
I feel like the period of figuring out your style, it's required to see what else is out there, to see what you resonate with. And then once you establish yourself enough, you're like, okay, I feel confident to just do my own thing.
Yep. I feel like some of the best leaders, were once followers, the best communicators are the best listeners, so I think in that same concept, like, which to what you said, I think I did a good job being a student and like following and just doing research and just being a fly on the wall and just like understanding the industry and understanding the game. That translated into me being, fairly good at what I do now, I think. So, or at least it helped me understand what direction I want to take with it. So yeah, I definitely agree to that.
I'm curious about the story too, like, because I've heard you say even today, you're like, Bricks and Wood itself maybe is not that special in terms of apparel, but it's the story behind it.
Yeah.
Like, what's the story behind maybe even like any type of art form? Other people that didn't see your brand might have their own interpretation, but like, do you have yours that you stick with, or can it bend?
I mean, I think I just stick with like, telling like a very genuine story that relates to me, because I feel like one thing I always say is that I'm going to make sure that no matter what we put out, I'm always be able to have like a heartbeat to it or like some form of like spiritual connection with that item. It's almost like giving something that's just there, like it's just a thing, just giving it more meaning. I think the story is, of course, it's like South Central and it's LA and it's like me, but I think more than anything, I think it's just when it's genuine, people can relate to it no matter where it's from. I think that's what makes it relatable, and I think that's what makes people gravitate towards a brand and like the brand for what they do, because they're like, I might not be from LA, I might not have ever been to South Central, I might never even go there, but I can feel the emotional or spiritual connection through these, campaign videos or photos or the caption or this garment or just the story of this moment, which makes me want to like invest into this brand, financially, and put my time and support into it and those type of things. So of course it's the overarching of it. It's like, yo, we from LA no matter what, South Central no matter what. But the true connection between myself and like the general consumer is like, they just appreciate the the openness to it and the vulnerability around it. I think that's kind of like where we find the most success in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like people who wear it or resonate with the brand are from what the brand represents, or do you see people that are like from completely different
it's
life?
hard. It's funny because people ask me all the time, like, who's your demographic? And we're still trying to really figure that out. Like, I kind of know what the kid, not even just a kid, just that person, kind of is into. Or I can kind of tell based on like certain items that we sell that are more popular than others. But like, I think for the most part, I want to say no. It's not, I wouldn't say 50-50. I think it's definitely mostly no. So maybe it's like 60-40, maybe even 70-30. But when you make it human, I think it doesn't really matter. I think when you make it just relatable to just an emotional, when you can just feel it, you don't have to relate to it. That's another thing too. Like, you don't have to actually relate to my experience. You just have to if you just feel it, I think you just want to support that off the strength. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's like where the brand has value. And I think that's where like the general consumer of what our brand, like, I guess, attaches itself to. I think that's where that stems from.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to say because it's like, one thing I do say, people definitely appreciate just us being honest and us being vulnerable and how we share our attention to detail and that type of thing. But I don't think I can't completely say it's people who actually experience or like resonate with exactly what we're talking about exactly. Because even people on my team, they don't necessarily have the same experiences. I mean, not everybody on my team is from South Central LA or LA alone. For us to be behind this message because we all understand the bigger meaning behind it. That's not just like my actual experience. It's like something that I've, can share with you. And I think that's where,
Do you think there's like a bit of fascination with it too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a gift and a curse. There's definitely like a level of like appropriation, of course.
Right.
Like these certain levels of like, I wish I can be, this type of like from these type of areas and that type of thing. But I don't know. I think it's again, that's kind of like, I don't really focus on that too much.
Okay.
At the end of the day, you spending your money,
Yeah.
not like that, but like, I think at the end of the day, it's one of those things of like, I can't dictate why you buy bricks and wood. I can only tell you what I'm experiencing, what it's done, why you decide to support it and why you decide to invest your time and money into it. That's purely up to you.
Yeah.
I appreciate either way. Is there a preference of grace and care and like respect that we want with it? Of course, that takes it even further than just being like, oh, this is so cool and fascinating. Like, no, it's like sometimes some of the stuff is really like deep, But again, that's something that I can't really control.
Right. So. I was curious about your collaborations, let's say with New Balance.
Yep.
Like, you obviously felt comfortable with them and went forward with that. And I'm sure you have other ones you said no to.
Yep.
But I was curious how you feel from a brand, like especially a big brand like that, where it's like basically corporate, them being able to attach themselves to things that you've been through and your life story just through the partnership, like not having ever experienced it.
Yeah, I think early on, and even still today, I've always been very like wary about who we collaborate with. To be completely honest, a lot of people might not know this, but we really don't do outreach. Any collaboration you've ever really seen has been like just by the grace of God landed in our laps, and we just been able to, capitalize on those situations. New Balance is very organic. It came very organic, but in regards to the question, the beauty of working with New Balance that I've heard nightmare stories about with other companies, other brands, other partners that they've done work with, not New Balance particularly, but like just other brands. A lot of brands and, collaborators don't really have as much freedom as it may seem. The only freedom we haven't had so far with New Balance is that we haven't been able to select exactly like any silhouette that we want. They'll give us the options of like which ones make the most sense, and then we'll be like, okay, we feel good about this one because of whatever reasons that we come up with. In regards to like the creative and like the storytelling, they've been really supportive. And I think that's what made it easy to work with them so far, It just so happens that we started working with them when they started trending upward, and now they're probably the biggest, next to like a Jordan or Nike in regards to a shoe, a shoe brand. And it's like, they literally, they're human to us. Like the team that we work with, they actually support us and like put energy behind us and effort, and they respect our level of where we are as a brand now, where we're trying to go, and they like really like try to find that middle ground to make it feel actually collaborative. So with them particularly, it's just a blessing because it just works out really easily. I haven't had too much of that just yet in terms of like the negative side. I've had some, but without saying any names, but New Balance particularly, it's been super easy.
I guess because they let you tell your story. That's what it is. Like you get to tell your story your way.
1,000%. 1,000%. Yeah, I feel like if you can't be honest, in collaboration or whatever, then you're tarnishing the design, you're tarnishing the story, tarnishing like just the whole moment. And now you're trying to fabricate it to like make it consumer based. And it's like, for example, our first shoe, we made, I think 800 pair worldwide. That is extremely low. And especially when you think about the global reach that New Balance has. I was under this impression, well, not even under this impression, this was an honest situation, but I really couldn't really like afford to pay for X amount of shoes to sell them. So I'm like, I can only afford 500 at the time. And I thought that was crazy at the time too. And they kept telling me like, yo, you can do more, you can do more. I'm like, nah, like, I don't know. Fast forward, 800 pair of shoes is like ridiculously low compared to how many people live on the planet. You know what I'm saying? But in hindsight, I think that the fact that they were still okay with that from a global corporate company to let us just drop 800 pairs of shoes in one market, which was essentially just LA, and like just do that's such a small thing, is like that's a testament to who they are too, and how much they believe and support the bigger picture. So when that happened, I think that's kind of like that set the tone for the future, and now we're able to kind of like expand and scale within the partnership too.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy because they for sure didn't make that much money.
Not even a little bit. Compared to, I mean, to me, I'm like, yeah, they great amount.
Yeah.
To them, they're like, cool.
Like for them to go through the trouble.
Exactly. Whatever that trouble was, whether it's, not hitting X amount of minimums on production or stores not picking up, who knows? I really don't know, but it was so niche.
Yeah.
Like, it was very, if you know, and for them to still be down for that was really cool, because now I look back, I'm like, dang, a lot of brands like would not do that. They'd just be like, they have to be something hyper specific, or they would do that for a bigger partner. Like that's the thing. I think that, if it's someone like, I don't know, Travis Scott of the world.
Yeah, that's the name I was thinking.
I'm sure he can do something niche like that and make it just go crazy, and it will be like a big marketing moment. I don't know how much New Balance actually benefited from that as a collaborator.
Yeah.
So it really was a stepping stone for us, and something that we've always been appreciative of to this day. So
yeah, when I was thinking of the question, like, oh, how do you feel about that? In my mind, I'm like, oh, it's kind of crazy that they could just like stamp their logo, and now all of a sudden they're a part of something that you built and lived through. But from the story, it's like they actually let you tell your own story, so it's different.
It had to be built. It took some people on the inside prior to me even knowing them to, I'm sure, kind of like, open some doors and like fight for that conversation to be had. But once they figured it out in that collaborative space, I feel like they've done some of the best job in letting partners really be transparent and letting them lead the way and just being the machine essentially for the partner. Because you're gonna always, because as the bigger brand or bigger company, you're gonna be okay essentially, right?
Yeah.
So when you just take a step back and just kind of like support it and watch it go, you can only benefit from it. Now your legs and your umbrella just get bigger. I think that's why they are where they are now. So
even the way you designed the shoe, I was reading it, and it was like each color, each texture, everything had to do with something from your life.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I guess that's the way you go about creating, like really digging deep into your own fabric and then turning that into your design.
1,000%. Try to start with something that feels familiar, but also can relate to product, because I don't think that every single reference point can replicate product, especially in colors or materials, that kind of thing. Like, I never want to like force it,
Okay.
Again, I'm not gonna say no names, but there are some shoes out there that are pretty forceful, like, oh, this is a reference to this thing when I was growing up, and it's like, I feel you, but you could have still made it more design friendly, or whatever the case may be. That's probably my own opinions, but at the same time, I always try to bridge the gap between the person who might care about reading the fine print, or might just want to see a clean shoe, when it comes to shoes at least.
Yeah.
So I keep that in mind, and I try to find that middle ground. And then some things reference pretty spot on. So then, I think when that's the case, it just works out that way. But I always try to like bridge that gap between the two.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
I thought that was fun. I was like, oh, I wonder if that's like advice you would give to go about creating.
Yeah, I think my advice to a creative is always just like start internally. Like sometimes we overlook what's like right in front of us. Like we overlook like the things that are like our own resources that we have. And it might look like we don't have much, but when you start to create a different like support system, or you appreciate your support system and create a different foundation for yourself, you start to kind of like, I don't know, I think you just really start to like really see the value in the things that are just like right here. What you've already worked towards, what you already built, and the things again that people can't take from you. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you're referencing your grandmother's house, that's your grandmother's house. I have a grandmother too. So, and I might remember things from her house that you might have in your house that might not be the same, but might bring that feeling back. Again, that's essentially where I came from in a sense. Like, when I did the grandma's house in my last shoe, that was the whole reference. It was like, yo, this is my grandmother's house. These are the things that felt familiar. These are where the colors came from. This is where the materials came from. More than half those people never been to my grandmother's house, But, I'm sure I would pray that these people have had grandmothers and can share that type of experience to understand like that's actually pretty dope, and that's what makes them want to buy into the brand. So I always suggest like starting when you can't find it, if you're struggling with it, just look and see what's around you. Sometimes it's right there. That's kind of like my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talking about New Balance and why you said yes to them or felt comfortable with them.
Yeah.
When I was doing my deep dive research, like I said, I've watched like every single interview.
Thank
so
you.
I don't even know, like when I'm referencing things, I have no idea where it's coming from.
You just know it's there.
I'm just gonna continuously quote you.
I'm with that.
Okay. But there was one thing I thought it was really interesting that you said that there were certain times where you said no, and after the fact you were happy because you were proud that you didn't deteriorate yourself for the opportunity, which I thought was like almost a poetic way of putting it, because that's exactly how it feels when you're trying to fit yourself into a space for an opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted you to talk about that feeling or that experience.
The one I can really think of that's more potent than others was, again, I'm not saying any names, but huge opportunity, all the facets. It fit the brand, it fit my story, it fit the type of partnerships we wanted to like work with, the whole nine. And to be honest, this one essentially was a no, kind of late in the game, funny enough. It was like kind of like on its way. Like we were already kind of like, designs were done, concepts were pretty much ready to go. We were like ready to rock. But to be honest, it was more so the back end of the business side. And I think it's a twofold for those type of things. Of course, there's brand integrity and things of that nature. You have to be careful what you say yes to based on, you know, how you want the perception of your company to be portrayed, because unfortunately, that's a huge component to longevity. It's how people see it, because sometimes how people see it is how people define it, and without even knowing it, you know. So it's like the first impression is almost like the last or the best impression, you know. So that's super important. But then sometimes it's just like the business just isn't right. And this is a situation that I could have easily, you know, bit the bullet and just like took the L and on the back end, and probably would have been a bigger moment. But then I was more so just like, you know what, like I have to make sure I'm finding the balance between both. It's not gonna always be perfect, of course. That's how scales work. But I think there again, you have to be mindful of what's good for, you know, the brand integrity, and also what's just a good business move. I find myself making decisions off of both. You know what I'm saying? And I think that in that situation, like I said, who knows what it could have done for us. It was at a very, you know, familiar time with like the brand, and that's kind of like coming off of the New Balance drop and that kind of thing. But it was just something that I was like, man, like essentially the contract that was set up for us was just about us essentially doing all the work and getting credit, but not enough credit, you know. And I think it was like, that's the part I didn't really appreciate of it, you know. So it's not even about credit all the time. That's another thing too. I think for me, I hit a wall with it, and I was kind of like, it's starting to get unfun. And usually I'm willing to like, again, bite the bullet and make things work, especially when the story is so perfectly aligned to like what I do and what I've done, and like the whole bricks and wood narrative. It just didn't work out.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think also what's important too is, since 2020, since the whole Black Lives Matter movement, like the whole support Black business thing too, is like being careful about that as well. You know, because people try to monetize for the moment, and you know, they might dry you out by you saying yes, 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 and thinking this thing is all, they're probably beautiful opportunities to a degree, but if you're not being mindful of your yeses and your nos to the same degree, there can be a time where you hit that crossroad and then you're like, dang, like now I'm only valued based off of me being attached to this thing, or now I can't get out of this box because people are, you know, because people only see me in this way, when in reality I was just taking an opportunity that I was just put in my lap. And it's like, you know, all money and good money, and not just about money, but just again, all good opportunities. All opportunities aren't good opportunities as well. The first time I ever did it, and it's at a time where you would think that it wouldn't even make a difference if I did it or not, because of the fact that I was so young in terms of bricks and wood, but I was so sure about where I wanted to go. And now I look back, I'm like, yeah, I'm so happy I said no. Because, and I don't really regret much of anything. Everything happens for a reason, but I had a very strong no at a time where I probably should have said yeah. You would think. I had a very strong no, sent a very like detailed email to why I was saying no. It all was based around, this is so funny, it was all based around a store wanted the brand. This is like 2019, late 18 maybe. They were putting a lot of energy into bringing bricks and wood in, and I was excited at first, and I had to sit with it. And the reason I said no is because I remember when I used to work for that company as an employee. Okay. And I didn't appreciate how I was terminated. So I said no.
Okay. Sometimes it just didn't align spiritually.
Yep, that was it. And I could have had the flex of being like, yo, I did it.
True, you could have done that.
Now I look at turn it all around, but I was like, nah, I remember how I was treated by a manager based off of how I was doing my job. And it wasn't I was doing it bad. I was just doing it. I just didn't do it in the way that the manager wanted me to do it because the manager only cared about one thing, but I care about actual customers. I care about the consumer. I'm not a good salesman because I'm emotionally attached. I'm not trying to get the number all the time.
Right.
But I think that naturally the buyer would appreciate the buy and the purchase way more if they feel comfortable when they're in the space. So, you know, I kind of had that approach. And I remember essentially my manager told me that I was helping a customer too long. They ended up buying.
Yeah, okay.
But they said I helped the customer too long. It was an older woman looking for a gift for her grandson for Christmas.
Yeah.
And he pulled me to the side after she purchased and left and said that I was helping her out for too long. Could I have, you know, rewrote that story and been like, now look at me, I'm collaborating with this store? Of course. But again, how I was terminated and how unfair it felt and how upset I was about it. I don't know. 3 years later, I'm getting an opportunity to buy my brand. I'm like, nah, because if my brand's sitting in these shelves, if there's an employee in there that says, yo, this is brand Bricks and Wood, he's trying to explain it to somebody and walk them through and help them out, that's the type of salesman I want to sell my brand, because that's how my brand's going to stick out in that sense. Because if not, I'm just another brand within the hundreds of brands that's in your store. So if y'all complaining about that type of employee, then there's no way that my brand can fit in this space.
Yeah, it's crazy too. Like such a delicate balance. You said like the business and like the brand integrity, but also progressing as a business, like just balancing all of that out. The first thing I ever saw of you was a video. I don't even know what it's called, but it's Extra Extra.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Like, is that what it's called?
It's a series. Yeah.
Okay.
One of them was called Extra Extra. It was basically our campaign for our extra denim.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that blew me away. Like I was like, even if that was just a series in itself, like a film in itself, I was like, I bought in.
Tight.
And then the fact that it was for not to say just for a clothing line, but how many clothing lines are dropping things like that for their brand? You know, like it's just like I realized, I think through that, first of all, like I was a fan of that, but then also realizing like I feel like it costs so much money to produce something like that. Like, did it even out financially?
Those things don't cost us a dime, respectfully.
That what?
They don't cost us a dime.
Oh, okay.
You know, shout out to the team, man. I guess that's all in-house. That's relationships and seeing value in the bigger picture. Shout out to Alex and Chris. That's my video team. They have a collective called, I feel like I pronounce it wrong every time, but it's Artre Fish, A-U-T-R-E. If y'all can figure that out, let me know. Yeah, Alex and Chris, man. I've been working with them for about 3 years now. And they just believe and trust the vision. We've been working together for so long. And they've gotten so many opportunities from us being in that lab and creating from scratch. They don't really look at us as like an invoice, as like you know, and I think I appreciate that so much because, you know, one, I don't always have the financial resources to be like, yo, I want to put this together. And it's hard to kind of like, people look at Bricks and Wood sometimes, they look at it from like this super conglomerate of a thing because we've done big moments. Yeah. But we're a team of 5. And there's 2 of us that's full time. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, so technically on a daily basis, a team of 2. Right. And I'm one of the 2. So, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, then sometimes I'm not even in all the time. So now it's a team of 1. You know, it's like, let's be realistic. Like, and we've never had more than 6 people on our team at a time ever, you know? So with all these things, you know, I think about when it comes to that, you know, I appreciate people who trust the bigger picture because I think that people have devalued genuine hard work basically because of the internet. I think people just are so accessible to like just things, information because of like what they see on Instagram and online that it took some people a lot of time and a lot of hard work with no compensation to get to the place that you enjoy it as a consumer. I think that's the part where it gets blurred and I think people just see the finished result and they just like, oh, I could do that too because I know what camera they use and da-da-da-da. That's great, you know, and all power to those people who can do that. But the people I work with, we all started at a time where no one was making any money or no one was getting anything paid. You know, it's like if I make $100 and I gotta split that up between 6 people, how we gonna make $200? You know what I'm saying? It's like, you really gotta look at the bigger picture. That might be, you know, simple math and something kind of stupid, but in reality, that's really how this works. You gotta be able to believe in what you're doing. And I think sometimes you gotta understand that at a bigger level. I respect people who need to get compensated. You know, I'm all for it in the proper way and how they feel they deserve. But for those moments that we're able to produce at a high level, that's because we started at a place where we were just figuring it out and we've monetized these moments as being peers and friends and having a genuine relationship that has transitioned to, you know, myself and them and others being able to have other opportunities outside of Bricks and Wood. I don't gatekeep nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not like, this is my team, but the thing is, the people who work around me, they still want to work with me to this day. And I think that's just on their own, you know what I'm saying, prerogative. So you really got to build that solid foundation with certain people and work with those people, you know what I'm saying, to like get better with them.
Yeah.
And you never know with that. Now that person might become the best photographer in the city, or, you know, the best videographer team that, you know, unknown or whatever. You know, it's so many different things. But yeah, with me, no, I'm blessed to have a great team. And I'm blessed to, you know, to have been in those very like just rooms of just brainstorming and figuring it out, and just like guerrilla style, and like, yo, we're going out here to the desert, we're gonna just figure this out, and then seeing the result in the end. And then people thinking it's something bigger than what it was.
No,
It's like, we was 5 of us deep out there.
I thought it was like tens of thousands. I searched them. I saved them. Like, you ever hear like a really good song and you're like, this song is so good because of the beat.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know about you, but like there's been times where I go find who the producer is because I'm like, this is like the source of the magic.
100%.
Like, so if you were to create a song with this producer, like maybe it would be at that level.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I felt about that video. I was like, if I were to do a video with these people, it would be at that level. Like, just that they're like the secret sauce to making something. I thought that would have been like $30,000.
Nah, not for me.
Yeah, and
I say that, and my boys, man. But nah, yeah, like I said, but they're you know, more power to them at the same time. Like they're a two-man show, and they kill it at that level. Though. You know, I'm with them in some of the post-editing process, but definitely in the field, and they be coming up with ideas and bringing lights and stuff and things that I would never thought about to even get certain shots. I'm thinking you could just bring the camera and the sun gonna do it all. They're like, nah, we need this little extra light and these reflectors and this, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we figure it out.
Yeah,
every time.
Okay, because one of my questions was like, if you're not paying for it, it doesn't apply. But I was like, do you still feel the need to fully execute your vision, no matter how much it costs? Like, even if it doesn't create profit.
Yeah, we don't compromise the creative at all.
Okay.
Not even close. At least not with my team.
Okay.
You know, again, if I'm outsourcing something and I know I can't afford the maximum of it, then I definitely will scale things down to what's affordable. I would definitely do so. But with my team, no. Because Bricks and Wood, you know, we're 6 years in essentially, but in terms of fully operating. But at the same time, we're a startup. You know, like, we're still figuring it out. We still have a lot to learn and have a lot to like that we want to accomplish from the back end. Clearly, the consumer or the audience, you know, don't see on the surface, but we're definitely, you know, still trying to figure out that like genuine flow. And there's a lot of different, you know, changes of hands, and some people in this position, you know, have 4 other positions, and in addition to the position that they're, you know, on paperwork for. So we all figured out. You know, it's fun.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it comes to territory, but we're figuring it out every day.
Something interesting that I read, you started in like 2015, right? Okay.
This is my math.
Okay.
Technically, the brand Bricks and Wood, the name of the brand, I came up with in 2014.
Okay.
So technically, I'm kind of on this 10-year journey. The reason why I don't count,
I didn't even calculate the amount of years.
So I don't even, but I actually don't count those 4 because I came up with the name and I was just living my life. I put a couple things out, but I really wasn't like focused. I didn't like really dedicate my life to it or my time to it or like my finances to it. Like, I would just kind of like, it was like a side project. And I moved to New York. I was doing like real life stuff. I like Bricks and Wood was like an afterthought. I count 2016. No, I'm sorry, 18? What year was that? Yeah, 2018 as my anniversary or, you know, mark, because I vividly told myself when my previous job shut down, I'm going to actually try Bricks and Wood full time from this moment forward and see what happens. And I've never had a job since.
Okay.
So
you made it happen.
That's where I marked my territory of like, this was year 1 for real. Because everything before that was like, it was like a friend brand. It was a little, you know, it was, again, I'm not knocking it. Those moments matter to me personally. They were just more. It was more of like a platform to kind of like spitball. It wasn't like I wasn't taking it fully serious. I feel like I restarted the brand basically when I started full time.
What was your family's reaction? Because I know your dad, he was a creative or is a creative.
Yeah.
But what was your family's reaction? Because like I said, I don't know where I read it from. But you said that you didn't initially get the support from your family. And like a sentence that stood out to me is when you said, you can understand from the perspective of, let's say, their past conditioning, but it didn't feel good to you that it needed to make, I don't know how you word it, like it needed to make dollars to make sense.
Yeah. My dad was always supportive. My mom, maybe at the time I said they didn't support me. I don't know if I said that exactly, but if I did, I would like to retract that statement a little bit, just because I've kind of found more mature words to use in that sense. I wouldn't say it didn't support me. I think it was more so from what they understood success was. they wanted me to just do those traditions so I can, if I was in alignment to that, that was success. So I don't think they deemed me as like unsuccessful or whatever at the time or didn't support. But I'll say this, my dad had a respectable career in fashion, but I can't say it was successful. And this is not me talking down. He would admit the same thing. Well respected, but a lot of things that he did outside of him being a great person and people loving him for who he is, it hasn't translated. It didn't always translate to like benefiting him so he can benefit off of it. You know what I'm saying? So I think that when it comes to my other side, my family, my mom's side, they're just, you know, again, they see success in a different light. They see a lot of my family, you know, my aunts and stuff, they're nurses and, you know, social workers, and they, you know, went to school and kind of did the process, you know. So when I was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the process, torn between the creative fashion stuff and still trying to like satisfy them, that's where it got a little dicey. And I think for me, you know, again, to their perspective at the time, it was more centered around, I would just say, you know, maybe in protection. You know, they just like, yo, they didn't want to see me not, you know, monetize those things like my dad didn't have the chance to. So, and they kind of saw me kind of like dabbling in that, and they're like, yo, that's cool, but make sure you go to school and get a job. And I bet it on how I genuinely felt internally. That was the result.
I feel like that's such a hard part of the journey when you decide to go another direction, because they want you to go the safe route.
Yeah.
You decide to go another direction, you're already going to feel that self-doubt, and then to have the doubting voices around you too. Plus, like, there's a process to get from point A to point B. So it's like you're gonna go through a whole period where you're not even proving your point. And you gotta be dealing with your own self-doubt and the self-doubt of the people around you. Now that you kind of got out of that, like, what would you say to somebody who's currently in that, like they want to go against what their parents are telling them?
I would just say be careful, you know, because you don't want to do it out of pure remorse. You don't want to do it out of like emotional reaction. I think you want to make sure you're doing it out of faith in yourself so that you can stand on that no matter what situation you're in. I had a lot of faith, and I have a lot of faith. So I think I was able to kind of quiet the noise a little bit because God was telling me something totally different. You know, and I think that's all that really mattered to me at the end of the day. You know, I have a spiritual family on both sides. I never explicitly kind of like said that, like, you know, this is my calling or something like that. But I do think that, you know, my advice to, you know, someone that's in that position or in that crossroad between their peers and family members and people close to them and trying to, you know, decide which way to go and having those conflictions, I would just say is make sure your faith is stronger than what you can see. Just because you're in a circumstance does not mean you're not working towards what you're called to do. And I think for me, what I was working towards didn't have results for them to like get back, you know, to stand on and back. I think that ultimately my faith was just stronger than my sight. So you could have put me in any situation. I knew I wasn't going to stay there forever, so it didn't matter.
Even that, like, how do you go about tuning into that voice?
Well, it was always instilled in me through like church and that kind of thing growing up. I will say that. Of course, I got older and got distracted and had my different waves of it and different things like that. I don't really know exactly like where it stems from. I mean, definitely like, I think it's just reminders. My dad is a huge reminder of like how and why. He's always reminded me of like what's bigger than all of this. And I think that you just hit certain points in your life where some things are just almost unbelievable, which makes you think. Again, everyone has different timing of when that happens for them. Some people it happens earlier, some people it happens later, some people never happens for them at all. But I think that you just start to generate a genuine understanding of like, oh, I'm not actually in control. I'm just more so being present. At least that's what it was for me. So through all these moments in life, whether they were good, bad, ugly, I was always able to reference something that I was like told or something that I read in the Bible or something that I was like, just something that connected with like a spiritual connection with myself. And it always came back full circle like, oh, like this is what my auntie was telling me, or this is what my dad was telling me. Then you start to just kind of be like, okay, what if I like actually take these things and like listen to them actually?
Yeah.
And then let's see, now I'm reading books and now I'm like, oh, like now I'm reading things that I'm referencing things that I've been through in real life. And I'm like, okay, so maybe I should focus more on like the feeling than the sight.
I think that's a good way to put it, because I was like, let's say somebody who's not used to tapping in, they're always listening to outside voices to guide them. I'm like, what's a way that you could tell people to tap it? But I think listening to the feeling is a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's funny. I've never been asked that question. Or I never would have thought of like a definitive answer. But I think honestly, I stand by that answer. It's
just checking how you feel.
How do you feel first, and then move accordingly. Yeah.
Like even for me, I'm having a realization because that could be a really good guidance system. It's like if it feels good. Actually, that brings me to something else that you said. You're bringing out all the receipts.
I know. I'm like, ooh, what you got there? I hope I didn't say nothing too crazy.
But you said it feels good or it doesn't feel good. It's worth the risk. But I feel like you're a spiritual person and you listen to your intuition. And if we're talking about following how you feel, I would assume it's follow what feels good. So I was curious what you meant by that, whether it feels good or it feels bad, go for the risk.
The feel bad part, again, no matter, I don't know when I said this. I don't even recall saying it, but I believe you.
Okay.
But the feel bad, I think if I had to, again, update that answer, that response now. I think the feel bad was the guilty conscience of making a decision. It's not because you don't want to, because you know the feeling. It's almost like, man, I want to do this, but if I do this, it's going to piss this person off.
Okay.
But I really want to do this.
Okay.
So that's the feel bad, is that confliction between going left or going right, but you still decide to go right. But you probably, but you're like, if I went left, this person would be mad, and this person mad at me, but I did it for myself. So maybe that's kind of what I meant. And if I didn't mean it then, that's what I mean now.
You're like updating your scripture like live right now.
Man, I ain't no telling how I was in these interviews. I was doing a lot. But in that same sense, like when I look back at that quote or like that idea of that, I would definitely say at the end of the day, when you tap into that internal spiritual connection with yourself and, the higher powers of the world that you believe in, those type of things, like you're always going to be guided to the right answer or the right decision when you do it from a genuine internal space. Now, if you're doing it off of emotion or just things that don't feel centered to you, the results of you doing the right thing might not come immediately, but down the line, you'd be like, okay, this bad decision made for a better person because now I know how this made people feel, how I made myself feel. I know what not to do anymore. Now I can tell a better story. Now I can get better game because now I'm relating to you. For example, this is something super small and almost not even related, but recently Kodak Black, who's also one of my favorite rappers right now, and Gemini.
Okay, you have to introduce me.
He's super good. He had a little viral moment where people were kind of like up in the air about, he was talking to like a youth football team, but he had like, I think it was like smoking and like cussing and like whatever.
Yeah.
And no one was, the people there was like happy to see him, the kids were happy, blah blah, but then people in the comments of course were like, he's talking to the kids crazy and he's smoking. And I remember I responded, they didn't like go like viral and like that, but I just shared, I'm like, honestly, I'd much rather him talk to me, give me motivational speech, because he's gonna give you a very raw, transparent of like experience of like what life is like. He was talking about don't do drugs, don't go do this and that, go to school, do this, but it's like he's saying that because he understands, like, yeah, he might be rich or whatever, he might have found his calling and things of that nature, but he's saying that because he's been through those things. And who wants that for little kids? Even though I'm already doing it, that doesn't mean I want the youth to do it. The blue collar guy who's coming and talking and being all professional, to me as a kid, that might have been boring. I'd much rather you give it, very raw and transparent to me. Like, that's what I really want. I respect it because you didn't come trying to like change your language or how you talk. You gonna talk and look exactly how these kids see people online, how they act with each other when they not, around their parents. And, I think that's the moment that fits.
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to touch on what we were saying before about like if it feels good or if it feels bad. And then while we're speaking through it, I feel like I'm realizing that the bad part potentially is the other voices and the good part is you listening to yourself.
I would agree.
If you were to break it down like super simply.
Yeah, I definitely think, the good or the bad is referencing like the good is the things that you genuinely want to do, the things that feel good to you. The bad is more so like making a decision that doesn't really align with who you are or how you feel. You get two polar opposites of results each time, I think. You would never know because you still got to make a decision and see, but
and you're still living that reality.
Exactly.
So
so you the consequences come with the action no matter what, whether you go with the good or the bad. And again, who determines what's good or bad? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not here to say what's good or bad, but I do support doing what feels good and doing the things that align with how you genuinely feel, thought out, just confident in these decisions. Those are the things I feel like are the good. Because you can stand on your decision, you can be conscious in your decision, and you can accept however the outcome, turns out. So I think that's what I would label as the good. I think the bad, quote unquote, is more so when you're just kind of making decisions based off of general things.
Yeah.
Oh, they said I should do this, so I did it. And it's like, most of the time, I don't think those things, work out in favor, but yeah.
When you talk about what feels good, sometimes you have to envision a higher version of yourself. So it's like you can confuse feeling good for feeling what feels comfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
So sometimes you need to envision this higher version of
Because
yourself.
you gotta get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's essentially what I'm talking about too. Is
Yeah.
like, it's almost like back to what we said earlier. It's like when you have like integrity, like brand integrity, right? Or a certain morality that you live with as a human being. It's like, if you envision yourself getting to a space for your company and for yourself, you have to support decisions and have faith in decisions that help you get to those places. So if you're doing a morally incorrect decision, you'll go polar opposite or, to where you're trying to go.
Yeah, you're gonna mess up your own path.
Yeah,
I never
so
thought of it
it kind of
that
comes
way.
with the territory of how
Yeah.
you make those decisions. So with my brand, I always saw my brand in a very controlled light, where I didn't want my brand controlled under the narrative or the umbrella of anything else, whether it was a big corporation or blah, blah, blah. I always wanted to make sure that my story was always told in the way that I can like present it to my consumer, to my audience. All decisions that I make, whether it's a yes or a no, was because yeses were more catered to where I'm trying to go, not where we are now. Because you might in the no's are like the same thing. And people might look at it as like, who am I to say no when I'm not that big or don't have that much autonomy over, or that much respect in the game or whatever. But it's like, this is where I see myself going. So this is my no, So I think as a human and that, as an individual, it's kind of the same concept. At least that's how I see it.
Do you think you have to be okay with the process being a lot longer?
1,000%.
Yeah.
It's always going to be longer.
Yeah. If you take that
Anything
route.
that's real is going to take like way more time. I don't have a duration, unfortunately, but they say the overnight success takes at least 10 years, you know what I'm saying? So when it comes to making morally conscious decisions, it's a lot longer because you're making decisions off of something that's not in front of you. You're just betting on yourself, literally, and betting on this thing that you have faith in, whether that's a career, yourself, a person or whatever. Like, you're betting on something that people might look at like, man, this ain't going nowhere, or this ain't gonna never happen. It's gonna take a lot longer because now you gotta funnel through the doubters and still fight through that to be able to, and still wake up every day to say, I'm still gonna do this no matter what, even if people are saying that it ain't, it's not attainable or it's unrealistic or whatever, so yeah.
It's crazy because I feel like just being an entrepreneur is scary enough.
Oh yeah, it's funny. I'm in the thick of it at this point, and it's like I'm kind of like I'm here. But when I really think about it, I'm like, whoo, this is a scary journey because any day this thing could change, or for any person too. So it's like, how do I give advice to somebody where how I got to my position won't be how someone else gets there? They might take a lot longer. They might respectfully never get there. It might be so many different variables to it. So it's kind of hard for me to give advice. So I think that's why the best thing I at least do is just be honest.
And that's why it's helpful to go a little deeper, because from a conversation like this, you can learn perspective that can help you along the journey.
Yep.
It's not about like, oh, this deal with this brand happened and this happened, and they're trying to follow your footsteps, because it'll never work out like that.
Exactly. That's why it's like, it's not really like, that's not realistic, and that's not how that's going to work ever for anybody. I can't be like, I'm over here talking about how I got these collaborations, never did no outreach. Now imagine if I had better outreach, I probably have more moments, or who knows, but no two stories are alike, and I think that's kind of like that's the unfortunate part of the risk, but the reward
it's the thrill too.
It's a thrill for sure. I wouldn't want no other way, to be honest, because I think it's funny because now it sounds scary, the fact that if I ever had to go and get a job, that sounds way more scary.
Yeah.
Like the idea I have to be at work at this time for this person to get paid this much on this day a week, like all those those structures scare me even more.
Yeah.
I don't know how what the next collection gonna do, but here we are. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna just keep grinding, Do
you feel like it's a struggle to stay present? Because I feel like in entrepreneurship, or like, let's say this brand, it's obviously been progressing, you're years into it now, but like when you're planning your life, you don't know if it's going to be around in 10 years. Like, is there a fear of like putting all of your energy into something that you can't really predict where it'll be in 10 years from now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I got fear tatted on my arm for a reason.
Oh,
I think that
I never noticed that.
It's funny, my tattoos are kind of hidden, like on my arms and on my head or whatever. But I think I've been able to like use fear against itself. I'm more afraid of not trying, than anything now. And I think maybe at one time I was kind of like having fear of these perceptions of what it looked like, these fears of, but I think being so afraid of those things make you work hard to not put yourself in those positions at the same time.
Right.
You know, Kendrick has, and the tattoo is based off of a Kendrick song called Fear. One of the bars that I'm referencing, he says like fear of losing creativity. And it's like, that's a real thing. You know what I'm saying? You 27, you making all this money. You had fears when you were 7 years old. You had fears when you were 17 years old. Now you got these different types for the 27 years old, multi-millionaire, you know, big global mainstream artist. Now you have fear of like, dang, what if people don't like my music or like what I do? When I was younger, I had fears of my mom giving me a whooping for not coming in the house at a certain time. Or when I was 17, I had fear of honestly being in the streets and not knowing if I'm gonna make it home because the streets are so messed up or chaotic. And now I have this fear of like, now I'm in this position in my life where I'm like, and people gonna love me the same all the time? Like now, you know, I think I've been able to kind of overcome the concept of like those type of fears by, again, understand where I don't want to be. So I just kind of continue to stay true to my narrative, because at the end of the day, no matter what, if you have faith in that, it's going to always transpire and stand the test of time. So I feel like I've always naturally been able to remind myself how I got to where I'm at, no matter where I'm at. So it does get a little, you know, cloudy and foggy, but for me, it's a little bit easier to find that center again, because I'm like, wait, hold on. Yeah, maybe that moment I was caught up, but now I'm like, just make sure you're still telling your story no matter what. It might get bigger, it might get larger, but don't start feeding into the narrative of scaling or the narrative of what success is. It's like, no, just pace yourself and do your thing. Now, again, at one point I thought 800 pair of shoes was crazy. Like, where I'm gonna put 800 pair of shoes? Sold them things and no problem. But at the same time, it was like 800 pair of shoes compared to however many billions of people on this planet Earth. It's like, let's think about it. The fractions of that is so small. So when you start thinking bigger, you kind of like, you want to be mindful, because you like think you got to like fulfill that need of like more and more and more. But sometimes it's like, we're never going to touch every person. So it's like, let's just make that clear. There's always going to be someone who doesn't know who you are. So if you're always fighting for that, you're going to always be fighting for some more validation almost. How about you just stick to what you know and how you got here, and let that grow organically, let that grow and flow, and cater to the people that are going to actually help you scale to the healthiest place you can actually get. And then, you know, and find comfort zones in that. You know, again, that's just me though. I think some people want more and more and more, and that's all on them. But I can care less about that perception of it. You know, I can care less about that journey. You know, for me, I definitely see like a space where like, I don't know what it looks like, but I know what it will feel like.
Okay.
And I ain't felt it yet, clearly, but it's like when I feel this moment, I'm gonna know. I'm like, okay, I'm good now.
In terms of what you're looking to accomplish, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you even say like the end? I feel like I shouldn't say the end.
Nah, I don't expect it to be an end per se.
Right.
You know, maybe in terms of like, I don't know if I ever would to sell the brand or something crazy, like,
Okay.
you know, like that, you know, which is not something I'm like totally against. I'm not looking for that right now, but you know, if I get to a point where I'm just like growing in my life as an individual, that could be considered classified as like an end point. I think for me, it's not really about an end. It's more so about what I'm trying to, I want to feel it and be able to, whatever I feel, look around and then be like, okay, what I feel is now my reality, and now I'm good. Now I'm just good. Whatever that, you know, again, whether it's the end, the beginning, something new, something different, who knows? But it's more so a certain level of grace and peace that I want from it before I stop trying to, you know, continue to do what I do every day. Yeah.
And even with the fear thing, I feel like it's just accepting that it's a part of the whole journey.
Exactly.
Like you're going to be dealing with it all the time.
All the time. You're going to be, you know, questioning yourself. You're going to be, you know, confused, and all these things that stem from the concept of fear.
Yeah.
No matter what. And that's what I'm saying. You just got to just accept it for what it is, because it's a part of the process, no matter what.
It doesn't mean you're on the wrong path.
No.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I say I use fear against itself. It's like, I know you're going to be here. You're going to scare. I'm going to get scared at some point. I'm going to feel a way about something. I'm going to be conflicted, stressed, and whatever. At some point, it don't matter. It don't mean it's going to stop me though. You know, that's kind of like essentially what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to quote you again.
Yep.
I have a few more quotes, but one of them is that you want people to understand bricks and wood on a spiritual level. So I was curious, do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I feel like that's part of like my spiritual duty, honestly. I just want to simplify that, because not everybody is tapped into that spiritual journey, or some people don't care to, and I respect everyone for however they decide to go about their life. To simplify it though, I think I just want it to be a feeling that you take from the brand, rather than just like they make a good clothes, or this is a, what, you know, again, however you get to the brand is cool, but I think if I was able to decide like how I want the consumer to consume us, it would be that. It would be like, it makes me feel something, and it makes me think, and it makes me consider life and people and stories and details and moments in a different way. And I think that plays along tapping into your spiritual side, because it's a little different. It's emotional too, but I think once you tap into your vulnerability of your emotional state, you then open yourself up to a spiritual reception. So I think that's kind of goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's what people should kind of aim for? I mean, and maybe it's not even, yeah, like what's your perspective like on what they choose to do professionally being that vehicle to get people to connect to
I
them
would
emotionally?
say it just depends on, the type of creator you are, for one. I will say that it depends, because if you're looking at a company, if you're starting a company to make a lot of money off of and become the next target, then my process is not going to work for that. I can tell you that right now. I do think that if you're not in it to make the most money, or you're not trying to just see it as a dollar sign, you see it as like a way to communicate and express yourself. There's a platform to release some your genuine spirit and emotions, and also so you're not going insane and you're not in the streets doing something you shouldn't be doing or living your life unhappy every day. Then yeah, then that's what I would support people doing that route. But it depends on what that person's goal is and how they see and what they level of success. Because for me, I never had an idea of what success was for Bricks and Wood. Or maybe I thought opening my first store was going to be success, but I realized opening the store was just like the opening the store. Not that it was small, but it was like it was the beginning of the work. Because now people get a tangible experience. So now I gotta almost create that energy that I got when I was a kid going to stores and being like, this is so cool. So I started a brand because I wanted to have a store, not because I wanted a brand per se. I just went inside brand stores. And that's where I was like, this is dope to have your own store and your own brand. When I see that, or when I was at, and I've kind of accomplished that, I should say, to the degree of that we're able to do it, especially in the economy that we're in with retail kind of like falling off. It's like it creates more extensions of like those access points. Again, that was just my perspective of it. I always wanted to like touch the people and like utilize my voice in a different way so it can reach beyond what I can do with my actual voice or my actual physical being, and let the platform kind of speak for itself and let the conversation amongst it, kind of like grow. And that's what it was for me. So I feel like it depends on what that North Star is for that person, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't suggest it for everybody, not even close, because there's absolutely no rubric to it. It's all feeling. And it's all about how you feel.
Yeah. And everybody's built to go to like spend their professional life in that kind of way.
Yes, you got to spend a lot of time with yourself, a lot of time thinking, a lot of loneliness, a lot of some depressive moments, some positive moments. It's a lot that goes into it. If we get deep, into like what's it really like, being in this seat, and speaking about it in this conversation. And you gotta get personal. You gotta get a little personal, but you gotta tread lightly with the personal, but you gotta do it just enough so that people can like relate to you. It's a lot, So it's a lot of self-awareness that goes into it before you start sharing it,
For sure.
outwardly, for sure.
Do you feel like your definition of success changes often?
Maybe like the high level. But like, I think success is the feeling for me. It's not really like the actual outcome. I mean, the outcome dictates the feeling, of course. But I think if I feel okay with it and I feel relieved and I feel like I've gave it as much as I could, then I'm like, and that's kind of like I'm good. I can find myself accepting or claiming something that's successful if I'm like, I had to get that off my chest and I had to like share that.
Okay.
I like for my fall winter campaign 2023, that's exactly what that was like. And it did well. And I think it did well because it was so vulnerable, because it was so emotional. But I highlight that to myself a lot because I'm like, I'm glad I did that. But I don't want to pull from that space all the time, so.
I kind of like that, where it's like you're looking at it from if you fulfilled what you intended to fulfill. It doesn't really matter the numbers or how much you made.
Nope, not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close. If you told the story correctly and you did your part, I think that should be appreciated and celebrated as success. But again, everybody got their own, I guess levels of what they see is like. Some people got to make X amount of dollars and that kind of stuff, and of course that adds on to the feeling, of course. But that's not the only feeling for me, because we've made not so much money in certain moments, and I've still felt really good about certain things. I'm like, people just might not get it right now, or whatever the case may be, or maybe it was too much of this or too much of that, but I did what I had to do. So I'm not about to dwell on it. I'm gonna just that's the creative part. It's like, well, next project.
Yeah. I'm curious to talk about your dad. I feel like we have to talk about your dad. When I reached out to you, I told you I was like in tears watching your Father's Day campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Because you described, I don't even know if I can categorize it as like your professional life. Like it seems like you're aiming to complete his story.
Yeah, his revenge.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what you said, that you're his revenge.
Yep.
So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that because I was going through, just going through a page trying to gather information. But when I landed on that, I was moved basically to tears. So I wanted to for sure highlight that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, honestly, what I said was kind of the perfect definition of when I take a step back and look at what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. All those things, I realized like, oh, I'm just completing his story. Like he gave me the keys a long time ago. He put the battery in my back a long time ago. He gave me the access points to what he could. In hindsight, it may sound like, oh, my dad like put me in the game. Yeah, but he didn't put me in the game with ownership. He didn't put me in the game with no money in my pocket. Like he didn't like give me X amount of dollars. Like, yo, go start this up. He didn't tell me where to go manufacture a t-shirt or screen print. My dad didn't do none of that kind of stuff. He just gave me honesty. He just gave me a very raw, uncut conversations around what was happening. He brought me around so I can see it in a very real way. And I've seen people love my dad. I've seen people love him and say he's the greatest guy on earth. And I see the same people do nothing for him at the same time. And not that anyone owes anybody anything. Well, guess what? I owe my dad, so I got it from here.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So I think for me, it's just like taking his footsteps in terms of the field of fashion. Mm-hmm. It's a no-brainer to bring him up or to reference him because a lot of the information that I was getting at a naive space in my life was from him. And a lot of things that came around full circle that I can reference point. I'm like, oh, my reference point is really just my dad most of the time. Mm-hmm. Like my first BBC shirt was not because Pharrell had it on in a video. It was because my dad gave me the shirt and I saw it in the video and I said, oh, I have that shirt. You know what I'm saying? Like,
so a lot of your creative reference points are just from your dad.
Yeah, whether even if it's not creative reference points, it could just be like the inspiration as a kid that I was just taking in without even knowing I was going to use it as inspiration. Just the things I was just into, and I think that because a lot of times now I don't really pull too much from like other brands and that kind of thing too much. Like I'm inspired all day, but I'm more inspired by like the process rather than the result. I respect the Pharrell for like how he thinks outside the box, a Nigo or a Kanye or Jay-Z or, certain people like that. Like I respect how they got to where they are to be so respected rather than being like, I want to have the next BBC, I want to have the next Rockefeller or, that's not what I've ever said to myself. So I think that it's more of that. So, but again, a lot of my like direct references, they stem from literally my dad putting it in front of me or putting it on me as a kid. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like giving me these clothes and giving me these things and being like, yo, this is the new thing that my homie made, or I got this in when I was in Japan and I brought it back for you. And I'm just like, all right, I'm just wearing it, playing basketball in the playground, getting it all dirty. He like, man, you don't even know what you got on. You messing up this t-shirt, these shorts. And I'm like, I'm a kid, so then you get older, then you start seeing the conversations around it, Chrome Hearts and all this stuff. I'm like, man, I had Chrome Heart wallet in middle school. Mm-hmm. Literally had a Chrome Heart wallet chain and necklaces. Like I had, you know what I'm saying? Like it's all those type of things. So
it's kind of funny to look back on, like seeing pictures of yourself wearing this stuff so young.
Yeah, and it's like even then it's like nobody was really taking pictures of it because nobody cared about it that much. They didn't know about it, but now this stuff is like the hottest things on the streets now, and valued at much more than it was then. So yeah, honestly, like I said, I think it's more so just completing the mission. Yeah,
I feel like this
and seeing however far I could take it, and then whether it ends, begins, or continues based off me beyond, that's for God to decide, but that's my calling. And that's where I'm at. So
I feel like that's like such a beautiful purpose to continue.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like a parent's dream too.
Yeah.
That you would like pick up where they left off.
That sounds, if I had kids, I would I would be happy for hearing them say something like that.
Yeah.
Job well done by me in that sense. So yeah.
Like you've been so inspired by him to just in terms of your journey.
Yeah.
But is there like a certain lesson that he taught you that really stands out?
Honestly, lesson more than anything has been just kind of like keeping God in the driving force of everything, to be honest. And I think just the lessons of just transparency, I can't think of anything hyper specific. I mean, I can, but without sharing the detail, but because there's so many, I think it's more so just how he showed me the balance of life, honestly. How he shared these things, how he gave up game and what he put me around. Like, to be honest, there's some things he put me around that he should definitely be in jail for. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna lie. But, it's just like Those again, I think it's just as good and or bad these things were. It was necessary, and it shaped me for sure. So I think it's the life lessons of just like being honest and transparent about the process. You know, just like this is what it is. This is what I got to do to provide for you, for myself, for the circumstances that we in, and we gonna just figure it out. You know, it's kind of like make lemonade out of lemons type situation.
You mentioned process a lot. I feel like you have like an appreciation for process specifically.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that people overlook a lot of the times, especially in a creative field or an entrepreneur. Like, let's say somebody who hasn't lived that lifestyle, they disregard process. So I wanted to hear your perspective on process and what is maybe like some people's processes who you respect and why you respect it, or like a part of process that stands out to you.
I'll say this. Some of the process I respected a lot, even if I was, and I actually was not even the biggest fan of the result, was Virgil. And I'm thankful I appreciate the process while he was alive. It wasn't something I gathered later, because I kind of hate those moments where you're like, something happens and then people want to respect them even more. You know, I have my things with Virgil, and I take back how I set them and and how I went about them, but I think that I still stand on the things that I, said. But one thing I've always said though, no matter what, was I appreciated how he went about building his own world. Like I appreciated like how he valued every small detail. And maybe it was things that I could understand, maybe it was things that I couldn't understand, but I respected it so much because I'm like, when I first opened up that 1, 2, 3 book, I forget the name of the book because it doesn't have the title on it. Oh, Figures of Speech, I think.
The blue book, like royal blue.
I think it's called Figures of Speech or something like that. When I just like went through it, and I was like, I remember the first time I was skimming through it, I'm like, oh, he just documented everything. Photo this, archive that, how many miles he flew this year, hard drive documented this, prototype 1 of this, oh, sample original Watch the Throne cover, Yeezy or covers, and it was like, or Yeezus covers. I'm like, yo, wait, what? Like, you cared about all that? And then just who would have thought that I would have never even cared about that stuff at one point, but I'm like, oh, this is how you like actually build your world. You create value in the thing that people overlook. You're like, all this matters. Like none of this is just something you could just bypass, or like you can, don't get me wrong, but all of this stuff matters. Like I care about the shoelaces in my shoe, same way I care about the colorway of the midsole. And it blew my mind that he cared so much and documented so much and archived so much of the stuff that he did over the years that he did. And I was like, wow, that was really impressive to me.
I wanted to talk to you about confidence, because I feel like everything that you do and all these risks that you take stems from a really solid confidence.
Yeah.
But in my research, I was reading that you're going through a process of accepting parts of yourself that you used to find, I don't know if you actually use the word ugly, but you like something that you felt uncomfortable fully embracing. And I thought that was really interesting perspective, and also the vulnerability it took to admit that and share that process with people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to touch on that.
Again, no clue where that source came from, but I definitely said that. Definitely said that. Yeah, I think for me, growing, maturing, transitioning, changing, more adjusting. I wouldn't say changing, because like the change is like, I feel like it's like a 180. I'm kind of like just shifting a little bit. I think in that space of me sharing that, I was more so, there was a time where I was really like stuck on like perception and just like how things looked to people. And to a degree, as a creative, that's kind of part of the job, like how it looks and how it's received, how it's, that's like your job, is to make sure that it's like people can, gravitate towards it on that level, right? So I think, but I think there was a time where I kind of got too caught up in that a little bit too much, where I kind of started to really feel, I don't know, like maybe a little lost, or I just kind of like got caught up in that just a little too much. I can't really recall how much I got caught up into it, but definitely wasn't myself. I pretty much got to a space, at least now, where I'm like, you know what, I'm kind of stripping that extra work that I'm putting on myself to satisfy something that probably won't change. So I probably should spend more time accepting this part of myself than trying to like dodge it, or to like keep putting a blanket over it, or to keep trying to fulfill the satisfaction of someone else's perspective of it, and just appreciate it for what it is, and being okay with that. I don't know exactly what that was I was talking about at the time, but in today's answer, I could definitely say that that extra work that I kept putting on myself around trying to dance around a true identity to who I was, I thought people would or would not like, I could really care less at this point. I think it's more of those like, once I found acceptance in myself, I was able to like, yeah, just proceed, to be honest. Strip that weight off my shoulders, that emotional, spiritual, mental weight, and then say, okay, now that that's done, whatever barrier or like hurdle I was trying to get over, I feel like I'm jumping over it because the weight is not so heavy. So now I'm like, okay, cool.
Speed.
Yeah, I'm getting some, momentum again.
Yeah.
And I think, stripping those things, whatever those things are for people, is kind of like what I was probably referencing to more than anything. Yeah.
I never thought about it like as additional work. I feel like so many of us put so much extra work.
We don't even realize it.
Even if you look at 24 hours in a day, how much extra work you're putting on yourself.
Yep, without even realizing it. Putting on yourself, and again, you're just adding weight to yourself rather than like, what are you doing for yourself? What are you doing to make your day in life easier? And I think that's kind of what I was alluding to. I would say in that conversation of like, let me just that confidence or the things that I did not like about myself that was uncomfortable. If they're still here, they're probably not going nowhere. So if I find more time to accept them, not only will I probably be better with them or at them, for the situations that I don't like, but I can just almost ignore it, like to a degree. Like once you accept it, you're like, oh, well, it's just there.
Silence.
So now, it's just like, it's just there. Don't have to really worry about it too much, and not in like a way where you sweep it under the rug, but you just know it's there. So that okay, let me make sure I'm making decisions that don't cater to this, or that give this thing life, or put more energy towards this thing. So yeah.
Did you have a process for that when it comes to accepting parts of yourself that you're not used to accepting?
I would say I had a subconscious process. It wasn't intentional. I think I would go hard till I hit a wall, and then I'm like, okay, I can't break through this wall. What's going on? Now I want to look into myself instead of like taking the process a lot slower and like cherishing everything for what it is at the time that I have it, and then be able to go. I'll just take it and run, boom. And then I'll be like, okay, wait, what's going on here? What do I have? What haven't I cleaned up here yet? What haven't I done here yet? Or why do I still feel this way? Even though I'm progressing, it's like a heavy load of progression.
Yeah.
You want to scale, but you want to scale in a healthy way. I can't sit here and say that I was scaling healthy in terms of like me personally and how I was intaking it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
It's like testing your own boundaries and getting there as quick as you can.
Yeah.
And then seeing if it's a wall you can take down yourself.
Exactly. Just keep going for it. But it's like, do I have to even put that much power into something that I can like fix right now? If I can communicate it now, or I can like get the help right now, or speak on it now, whatever the case may be. I think it's just like realizing that and being softer to myself was important.
Okay, my last question.
Yeah.
If you could break the mold on one thing, what would it be?
If I can break the mold on one thing, what would it be? It's funny you ask that question, because I feel like whatever that mold was in recent time, I'm breaking it. Or I broke it, and now I'm able to feel a lot better. I think the original mold was perception, though. Like just how I was perceived and how I was feeding into that perception, so people can continue to see me in a certain way because of the things I had attached to me. Again, it's going to be a work in progress, and it's never going to be like essentially perfect, but I think ultimately it's just like breaking the mold of putting too much energy towards things that don't morally like fuel me. And I'm not trying to like spend too much time on things that I can't control. And again, once you accept those things, breaking that mold is a lot easier. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be some form of it, but giving yourself grace on having the access to resources and tools and strength, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, to actually break it once it becomes too much. So once it's in your face and you're like, okay, this is my time to break it now before it gets too big, or before it gets too, heavy.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Yeah.
The wine was great.
The wine was great.
Too. I will finish this before.
I feel like we could have done like 2 more hours.